When I look at Buick, I often see a lot of consumers very surprised, especially if they haven't taken a look at the Buick brand in quite some time. Now, a couple of years ago, Buick decided to kill all of their cars here in America because everybody wants SUVs, and one of the brand's top sellers happens to be the Buick Envision. When the company brought that vehicle over from China around 4 years ago, it quickly became one of the brand's best sellers. So as you can see right behind me, we have the all-new 2021 second generation Envision. It has an all-new design, an all-new platform, and you can see it's much more stately and handsome versus the previous generation, which I found to be pretty anonymous looking. So with this all-new 2021 version, is GM envisioning a much brighter future, a much more youthful future for Buick? Stay tuned to find out. So with a name like Envision, I couldn't resist the urge to throw in a little pun. However, if you guys remember my reviews of the previous generation Envision, I wasn't really all that impressed with the car. It just was really anonymous to look at, anonymous to drive, and it just looked like it wasn't built or designed for American buyers, because remember, that car and this new version continues to be built at one of GM's factories in China. Buick, as you guys know, is a very prestigious and successful brand in China, although here in America, on their home turf, Buick is often considered to be an old person car. They have trouble attracting younger buyers, although in the last few years, they really have started to turn their portfolio around. So as you can see, look at the design of this new Envision. It definitely doesn't look like the previous generation. It's one of the most handsome looking crossovers that you can find, especially in the super crowded premium compact area. But this is my first time seeing the new Envision in person. When I saw this car in pictures, I was very impressed, and you can basically get used to this front end because Buick will be grafting it onto all of their vehicles for the coming years. The next generation, or the refreshed Enclave, is going to be getting this front fascia as well. But let's talk about the Envision, because this is seriously one handsome looking SUV. This is now built off of the same platform as the Cadillac XT4. So it's an all new platform, which allowed Buick to really widen this vehicle. It's around 3 inches wider at 74 inches wide versus the previous generation. You can really tell that from the front end, where you've got that signature Buick grille, which is much more pronounced. It's much wider and covers up a bigger area of the front end. You can see my tester is the ST, or it has the Sport Touring package, so it kind of blacks out the grille. You got the chrome accents, you have the Tri-Shield emblem in the center, and then all Envisions will come standard with these full LED headlights. You have LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, and you have these multi-reflector LED low and high beams. Down here you can see no fog lights, just some fake accent vents with some dark chrome trim, and then you have kind of like a fake skid guard look on the front end. Overall, let me know what you think in the comments below, what you guys think of the styling. I think it really works on this car, especially in the Cinnabar red metallic. I also like how the hood is very sculpted. You have these 3 power domes right there, and you can really see how much wider and lower this car is, which greatly improves the design. The old one just looked too narrow and too tall, which doesn't work for a lot of American buyers. Now let's look at the wheel options. My tester, having an ST Touring package, has a 20-inch black painted 5-spoke wheel. These are a much nicer looking wheel. They're wrapped in 245 width tires. And you can see a 20-inch wheel is really unexpected. It really looks good with the contrasting red and the black wheels. Although the one thing I don't like is that silver center cap in the actual rim. It should be black. It just kind of stands out in a bad way for me. I also think that Buick should consider painting the calipers red to make this car look even more youthful. But stepping back, let's look at the overall profile of this car. This is still very much a compact SUV. Buick did increase the wheelbase by 1 inch to 109.6 inches long this year, so that gives us a little bit more space in the second row. And its overall length is actually a smidge shorter at 182.9 inches long. This is still a compact SUV, so this is not like a mid-size crossover. There's rumors that Buick will be launching an Envision GX, which will be bigger and will offer a three-row version to kind of appeal to buyers who want a little bit more room. Now, looking at the rest of the side profile, you're noticing the mirrors are painted black on this ST version. You have black roof rails, and my tester is missing a panoramic sunroof, which would be around $1,500. If you guys add that, I strongly suggest you add that feature if you guys want more light in the cabin. And then from this angle, I really see a lot of Mazda design in the profile of this car. It kind of looks like a car that splits the difference between the Mazda CX-30 and the Mazda CX-5. You could very much compare this, of course, to a Mazda CX-5, especially in this rear quarter panel view. I really like the sculpted look of the rear fenders. I like the look of the rear taillight designs, which some of you have said it looks a little bit like Mazda or Mercedes. So overall, this is a very handsome looking designed SUV, much better looking versus the previous generation. Now, looking at the rest of the rear, you can see very cleanly styled. You have the Envision badge on this side, an ST badge here, which Ford should consider, you know, charging GM a licensing fee to get that, because it looks very similar to the ST badge that you used to find on the Focus or the Fiesta. And down here you can see there are no exhaust tips. Instead, you have this fake looking exhaust piece. The actual muffler is hidden underneath the bumper, where you have, again, that silver piece. And then when you open up the cargo area, this is an SUV, remember. My Tester has a power liftgate. It's part of the Essence trim level that mine is. And when you open up the liftgate, there's actually a smidge less cargo space this year at 25.2 cubic feet. If you fold down everything, Buick says you get around 52.5 cubic feet of space. That's around, you know, 10 to 15 cubic feet less than most of the compact mainstream offerings, and about on par with what you get in the Lexus NX. Underneath the floor here, there is a temporary spare and a little bit more storage underneath there. So now that I've talked about the beautiful styling of the new Envision, let's move into the interior, because it's a premium branded SUV, and I'm hoping that Buick has differentiated this car from its more plebeian, you know, Chevy underpinnings, although this is based off of a Cadillac. But stepping inside to this interior, you can see, if you guys have been in other GM products, this is going to feel pretty familiar. However, I am rather disappointed at a first glance. There isn't too much in here that screams luxury to me, and I think the design of the dashboard is just not my cup of tea. This area here with that vent just looks a little bit strange. What is really nice, however, is the largest infotainment touchscreen that you get in any modern Buick today. And you can see the door panel has a rather okay look with that fake carbon fiber trim, some aluminum accents. The Bose stereo in my Tester is a 9-speaker unit. It sounds pretty good. It's part of a premium package that my Tester has. When I shut the door, it has a relatively solid sounding thunk, and you can see the gauges. They have a very traditional analog tach and speedometer. We've seen that gauge display before, so I was hoping Buick could give us a new design. Here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see it's the same key that we see in every GM product with a Buick badge on it, of course. You do have remote start on the actual fob. Buick puts the button to fire up the engine over here behind the wheel. You can see the gauges do a nice sweep, and you have a 10.1-inch IntelliLink infotainment system. It does have wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. The screen itself is definitely large. This is 2 inches larger versus what you got on the previous generation, which had an 8-inch. And you can see there's the actual touchscreen, or the Apple CarPlay, which looks good. I think the screen itself looks great. This is much better than what you get in the Lexus NX, for example. It's much easier to use, so I do like that. Now let's talk a little bit more about the interior materials in this car. Now, looking at the dash, you can see it has a soft touch injection molded plastic, although it feels a little bit hollow to me, and I don't love the graining texture of it. It's a little bit cheap feeling. There's a fake stitching over here. My Tester has a heads-up display that's part of that premium package, which is nice. There's that same fake carbon fiber look plastic trim here, which again is better than piano black plastic, although you get plenty of that here on the center stack. You have more of that soft touch plastic here with the fake stitching on this part of the lower of the dash. You have these vents, which are kind of blocked a little bit by this protruding area that comes out. It's just not my cup of tea in terms of the design, but that's more of a personal preference thing. The steering wheel, you can see this is the same Buick steering wheel we've seen on other models. It does offer tilt and telescoping capabilities with a good amount of range, although I don't think the steering wheel comes out far enough for me, so be sure you try that out. You do have paddles on the wheel. You have a heated steering wheel, which is nice. Your cruise control and audio controls are on the back of the wheel. Overall, you know, the steering wheel, the leather feels pretty good, although I think the wheel diameter could be a little bit smaller. But it's a pretty nice looking wheel. The gauges, like I said earlier, you have this information helper screen in the center where you can show your different audio, GPS information, phone information, or just go to your actual, you know, trip computer or whatnot. This screen, I just was hoping that GM or Buick would have made this completely digital. They really need to do that. Cadillac is just starting to add that on their newest models. But this looks like it belongs in a Chevy, not a Buick that's trying to be a little bit more upscale. There's something about this interior that still feels a little bit too Chevy for me. When I put the car into reverse, you can see there is a lovely top-down 360 camera that's part of that premium package. Very good resolution and graphics. Very impressed with that. GM has been doing a really good job. This is better than what you find in a lot of Toyotas and Hondas. Actually, Hondas, you can't even get a top-down camera. So very impressed with that. I think that they did a great job. Going back to the home display here, you can see there's the actual infotainment system by itself. You do have, of course, all your usual apps. You have built-in GPS that my Tester has as part of that premium package. Relatively snappy response. GM has really been working hard to improve that. The audio system, or the audio information here, you can see there's what it looks like with your presets at the top. Most of you are probably just going to use the phone, the Android Auto capabilities and whatnot. You have your different shortcut buttons over here. No ambient lighting in here, which would have been nice. It would have differentiated it a little bit more from, I guess, the Chevy corporate counterpart. So overall, like the infotainment system, it's easy to use and it's really straightforward to understand, has good graphics. Down here you can see dual zone climate control, just 3-level heated seats, and you have an 8-way power on the driver's side, but passenger side does give you the same thing. So you have an 8-way power on the passenger side, which is unexpected. It's nice. I also like these seats. I like the contrast piping and stitching. These definitely look a little bit nicer than what you find in lower end GM products. They're also comfortable and supportive. However, if you want cooled seats, you need to go for the Avenir trim, and they also will include a seat backrest massage, which is kind of like a lumbar massage. It's not like what you'd find in some of the newer Cadillac Escalade models. Now, over here on the center stack, you can see there's a wireless phone charger over here, 2 USB ports, a power outlet, which is nice. You have a door that covers up more of that piano black plastic. Some of your driver assistance controls are over here, your lane departure alert, your stability control off. I don't like how there's 2 unused buttons over here. I'm wondering what those are if you guys go for the highest trim. There's a new push button, or a toggle style transmission selector. Push the park button to go to park, pull this to go to reverse, N for neutral is a push, pull this up for drive, and then M is manual mode, is another push button. This is actually pretty nice to use, and I also like how it looks. There's also an electronic parking brake, cup holders here. Your drive mode selector is right here. There's a touring, sport, and a snow ice mode. If I had the 4-wheel drive version, it'll have a little rotary dial hill that allows you to also choose your drive mode selector. Just like the previous Envision, we have this split opening center console, which allows me to basically get stuff in here if the passenger has their elbow on this, which is nice. There's a nice deep storage bin over here, which is pretty good. And then above me, you can see there is some LED lighting in the cabin. No pano roof. It is optional. Like I said before, it really would be appropriate in a vehicle like this. And then you can see this. The glove compartment is a pretty good size, damped but not lined with felt. So overall, decent technology, but I think Buick needs to improve the design. I just think it's a little too GM feeling in here to me. It feels like I'm in a Chevy as opposed to a more premium brand, but you can't deny the excellent infotainment system and just the overall straightforward simplicity and the comfortable seats. So I'm liking the interior of this car. I just think that Buick could have done more to really match the exterior styling, which is a really nice addition this year. Now looking at the back seat of the new Envision, like I said before, the wheelbase is now 1 inch longer, which Buick did give us a little bit more space in the second row. This actually has one of the most spacious back seats in this compact segment at 39.5 inches of legroom. But getting back here, you can see at 5'7", I didn't have to duck my head too much. This is actually a really generous back seat. I wasn't expecting it to be this comfortable. But getting back here and looking at the overall space, I mean, check this out. I can literally stretch my legs. There's so much foot space underneath that front seat, which really helps to, give passengers back here all the space that they could ever want. When I shut the door has the same relatively solid sounding thunk. The materials back here are still soft touch injection molded plastic, more of that carbon fiber look plastic weave with a silver accented or aluminum accented door handle. Windows back here, the switches feel pretty good, like the leather stitching right there. And then you can see back here, there are 2 Mac pockets. You have rear seat air vents. You have 2 USB ports, a USB-A and a USB-C. This is not flat here, so the middle passenger gets a little bit less space. And in terms of the actual second row, it does fold down, but they do not recline. Some competitors do offer the recline function. There's an armrest here that folds down, 2 cup holders. My Tester is missing heated rear seats. I'm not entirely sure if the Avenir offers that, but there is at least some LED lighting back here, but I really recommend adding in that sunroof for $1,500 to give you more light. Now underneath the hood of the newest Envision, Buick has actually simplified the engine lineup. The previous generation offered 2 powertrains, a naturally aspirated 4 and a turbocharged 4. This year, Buick has actually gotten rid of the naturally aspirated 4, and now you only get the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder as the standard engine. Now this engine is slightly different versus the old 2-liter that we had in the previous generation. The sad news, however, is that it makes less power this year. This is a 2-liter turbo 4 that's the same one that's in the Cadillac XT4. In the Envision, it makes 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. That is down from the 252 horsepower and 260 pound-feet that you got in the previous generation. However, it is up versus the 197 you had in the base 2.5 of the previous generation. Now, it all goes out through a one-choice only, a 9-speed GM developed automatic transmission, and front or a twin clutch all-wheel drive system is available for $2,000. My tester is actually only front wheel drive, so that kind of surprised me. I would probably recommend going with the all-wheel drive system for an additional $2,000. Now the kicker with this powertrain is it actually gets better gas mileage than the old base engine 2.5 and significantly better gas mileage than the old 2-liter turbo. This is rated at 24 in the city and 31 on the highway. You can put regular in it, although premium is recommended for performance. That is a huge improvement over the 2-liter of the previous generation, which offered like 24 mpg. All-wheel drive will drop the gas mileage to 29, which is still pretty good, about on par with the rest of the segment. Now, in terms of the weight, this new Envision is a little bit heavier this year. As this one sits, it weighs in at around 3,700 pounds. All-wheel drive would push you closer to 3,900 pounds. Despite that, Buick says performance should be relatively good, 0 to 60 in the 7-second range. And if you guys are looking to tow, this should tow around 1,500 pounds, depending on if you guys go for the tow package. So a few years ago, when I first drove the all-new Buick Envision, I'll admit, I was not very impressed with that car. It basically drove as anonymously as it looked. The car just didn't really stand out in any particular way, and I also found it to be pretty overpriced. So when Buick first showed off the all-new second-generation Envision, I was really impressed with the design. Remember, this car now shares a platform with the Cadillac XT4, which that vehicle itself is not terrible. It's just a little bit small. It doesn't look all that impressive, and it's a little overpriced, but it's a fairly nice car. So the Envision basically takes that platform, but gives you a significant discount versus the Cadillac, like a $5,000 discount. This car is actually $1,500 cheaper than the previous generation. And, you know, Buick has dumped basically both engines from the previous generation, a 2.5 and a 2-liter turbo, replaced it with a 2-liter turbo that gets better gas mileage than the old naturally aspirated 2.5, and we have around 228 horsepower. So this is supposed to be a premium compact SUV that, you know, you could compare to like a Lexus NX, an Acura RDX, an Audi Q5. And first driving this Envision, I'm noticing quite a few things. First of all, it drives very nice. It has a very comfortable, quiet ride quality. It has a very quiet cabin. I also find the seats to be pretty comfortable, although my tester is missing ventilated seats and the massage function. You need to step up to the Avenir version. This is the, you know, one notch below at the Essence trim with the ST Sport package. But my particular tester is front wheel drive. So let's try out the acceleration. I'll switch it over to Sport. Remember, we have the new 9-speed auto. We'll just put our foot down. Very quick and smooth shifts from the 9-speed auto, and you feel nice mid-range torque from this 2-liter. This car is not quick, but it will have plenty of power, significantly improved over the old 2.5. It feels pretty much on par with the last 2-liter turbo that I drove from the previous generation, but like I said earlier, this car is not supposed to be fast. I actually just want to turn off the traction control here. I just want to put my foot down once again. So for a front-wheel drive car with this kind of torque, 258 pound-feet, it does accelerate pretty well. I was expecting it to have some torque steer, none whatsoever. I do notice that those of you who, you know, constantly live in a snow belt area or just wet areas, you're gonna probably want to spring for the all-wheel drive system, because I'm gonna show you up ahead here. This car will spin out its front tires in corners when you really put your foot down hard. That's where you're kind of wishing it had the twin clutch all-wheel drive system. But I have very little complaints with this 2-liter turbo. It is quicker than most of the competition. Although if you're going to compare it to something like a Mazda CX-5 with the 2.5 turbo, that car is quicker. But I do like this transmission better. This is the 9-speed GM source transmission. It is a good transmission, really close ratio spacing. It just puts the engine in the meat of the power band, which is very important for, you know, this type of vehicle. There's that wheel spin like I was telling you about. just really snappy shifts. And also you have paddle shifters here if you want to take control of the manual or of the gearbox yourself, which it actually does a pretty good job of mimicking gear shifts and just rev matching on your downshift. So for those of you who have never driven a Buick in a while and you think they're just for your grandpa, you'll be surprised. Buicks drive really nice now. They have very, very good steering. The chassis feels really solid, really well built. It feels like a sportier driving SUV, surprisingly. Although the steering doesn't offer much in terms of feedback, I do like the overall package of this car. It feels slightly more upscale than most of the mainstream offerings, and it comes down to just the stiffness of the chassis, the ride quality, how quiet it is, and the responsiveness of the engine. So it's a good overall package there. And I'm pretty pleased. Now, in terms of just driving the car normally, let's go into our touring mode setting here, which my tester is missing the adaptive dampers, which on the Avenir model, you could theoretically say that the ride would get even better. In just regular drive mode, I'm noticing that the car stays quiet. The transmission goes unnoticed. Visibility is okay, although this pillar here is pretty thick, typical GM. The view out of the back is okay. I would also prefer if my tester had the rear view camera mirror, which it's missing because it's not the Avenir trim. And in terms of driver assistance, this is where Buick and GM continues to fall short for me. You do have the driver confidence package standard, which means you have automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist. My tester has blind spot monitoring. However, if you want adaptive cruise control, which most of the competitors, the mainstream ones, give that to you as standard. The Buick, you have to get the Avenir trim and you have to add a technology package for $2,000. It should be standard at this price range. As a premium car, it's unacceptable to me that it's optional. So I really think that GM needs to get some work done to get that addressed. There are also some aspects of this car which I don't love. I don't love the interior design. I don't like these gauges. They just look like they've been used way too many times. And there's something about this car that just feels a little bit like I'm driving a Chevy, and there should be something about a Buick that says you're not driving a Chevy, you're driving a little bit more of a premium car. Buick does pretty well in terms of reputation and sales in China, but here in America, they've been steadily, staying consistent or going up. But if they're going to really attract younger buyers, which they're heading in the right direction with the styling of this car. I think it's one of the most attractive SUV in Buick's lineup. I would like to see them push the interior design envelope a little bit more. I'd like to see them, do something to differentiate themselves from Chevy and from all the other GM products, because Buick needs something to help them stand out and pull younger buyers. And you're going to need more than just an attractive design. The Buick badge, unfortunately, still is a little bit tainted for younger buyers or buyers my generation. But I think once people drive these cars, you'll be really impressed with how it drives, and I think that's going to be the deciding factor for most buyers in this segment. Let's see if I can actually get it to spin a little bit. We'll brake torque it. Not at all. Very good. So if you guys are considering like a Chevrolet Equinox, a Ford Escape, this should definitely be on your list. I also like this more than the Lexus NX, at least the current generation, whenever a new one comes out. Now, I do want to briefly talk about fuel economy. 2431 is what it's rated at. Premium is recommended, but you can get away with using regular in this car. I got around 23 mpg in mostly city driving on the highway. This will do around 30 mpg, so pretty good gas mileage. It feels lighter, it feels nimble. It's a really great highway car, and I think that's what is going to surprise you about this car. Is it's fun to drive, or it feels competent to drive. I wouldn't say fun to drive. It's comfortable. It has plenty of room in here, although keep in mind most competitors in the mainstream segment offer more space in the cargo area. The trunk is a little bit small, but the back seat is pretty usable. And I do find this to be slightly quieter than most of the other, non-luxury brands. So I'm overall pretty impressed with the Envision. I just think that Buick needs to do more. They need to do more to completely change their image, but they are at least heading in the right direction. So even though Buick continues to get dinged for having an old person stigma reputation, I actually am relatively impressed with what they're doing with their all SUV lineup. Obviously, I'm sad about the demise of all their sedans, namely the Regal and Regal Tour X. It just didn't sell very well. I am pretty impressed with the latest crop of SUVs. I drove the Encore GX earlier this year, which I actually surprisingly liked. It's based off of the Trailblazer platform. And now after driving the new Envision, this is basically the compact SUV that they should have launched 4 years ago. And there are certain elements about the car that I do think that Buick needs to address, but they got a lot of things right. As you can see, the design is really beautiful to look at once you ignore the Buick badge. I do think that they need to consider offering a high performance version. And also I'm wondering, where is their electrified lineup? I'd like to see an all electric crossover come to market, or even a plug-in hybrid, something with performance, because that's really what's going to drag a lot of younger buyers into the showroom. But if you guys are just looking for a comfortable premium crossover, this definitely delivers. It has a great ride quality, it's got a great powertrain setup, it's got comfortable seats, it's got good tech on the inside, but the interior just needs to be completely redesigned to help differentiate it from other Chevy products. Cadillac kind of has that same problem on every other vehicle except for the Escalade. But overall, when you look at the price point of the Envision, this is where it should become rather enticing, because this car, the new version, like I said earlier, is $1,600 less expensive versus the previous generation at a starting price of $32,995 for the base version. The Essence trim will essentially add $3,000 more for $35,000, add $2,000 for all-wheel drive. Now my tester, of course, with the Cinnabar exterior paint, with the premium package that it has, stickers for around $41,000, which does make it a little bit less than most of its premium competitors. However, there's an asterisk there because Buick and GM has a problem with safety features as standard equipment. Yes, you have their driver's confidence package 1 is standard, but if you want adaptive cruise, you need to step it up to the Avenir trim and add a technology package, and you still need to add $1,500 more for a sunroof. My tester doesn't have cooled seats. You'll get massaging seats if you go for the Avenir trim in addition to the cooled seats. Basically, if you spec this out with all of the premium touches that I expect a premium SUV to have, you're looking at around $47,000 for a loaded Avenir trim versus this $41,000, which at that point, the Envision does get a little bit more expensive, but remember that Buick tends to have plenty of incentives and rebates and discounts on this car, which it's a brand new generation for 2021. I shouldn't have to see so many discounts on the car. That's kind of the GM way. But if you guys are okay with that and you want something that's a little bit different than the mainstream offerings, you don't want those fancy luxury badge that come with the fancy price tag and the snobbery, this is definitely still worth a look. It's one of the best looking new Buicks that you can buy in 2021. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2021 Buick Envision. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.